Welcome to Portals of Perception and to the Universalis project, episode number 7. You're about to discover that we approach this 7th conversation in a whole other different way. And through the conversation, we developed and discovered the theme, which is partnering with the universe. Homo Universalis is about discovering a new way to partner with the universe and to dance that partnership in your own life. So stay with us in the conversation so you discover how that formulation and cosmology appeared with us live. Nothing here was planned or rehearsed. It was actually doing the very thing we were unlocking and discovering through the conversation. Discover for yourself. Welcome to Portals of Perception and to the Universalis project, episode number 7. I'm here with Heney and Kyriaki, Nikandrou, and we have regathered with this adventure we call the Universalis project. Karen, Kyriaki, welcome.
Hello, Aviv. Hello, Karen. Great to be with you.
Hello, Aviv. Hello, Kyriaki. It's good to be here. Hello.
Well, so I happen to be again in Lisbon, Portugal, to lead a strategy event. And we had a sense and the intuition and then made a decision to endeavor to create a different kind of a Universalis conversation. The first 6 conversations had a propelling thrust. We were trying to cover a tremendous amount of ground in each of the conversations. And the sense of this conversation is to slow down, make some space for conversational reflection and musing, and see where it takes us. And if it's a keeper, we'll make it a keeper. So where would you like to begin by way of reflection or a prospective space you want to take us into by way of perspective or living inquiry or something you're working on as a result of our explorations or anything really? Where would you go?
Oh, hello, everybody. I'll have a start. When we first were introduced to even the term, let alone the in-depth concepts about Homo Universalis, they felt very distant and very, very evocative and very enticing, but really kind of, what have they got to do with my life? It was, in a way, it was more a sense of a feeling of something that was possible for humans to reach for evolution to progress to. And as such, because this is the area that my life is interested in and has been for many, many years, and there was also an art aspect and conversation aspects. So everything about it was, yes, wonderful. Let's explore this. A little bit further on into the journey, which we are, 6 months and more, this specific journey, it's become different because it's become more important. And it's become more important to find where it actually lives within my life, within the arena of what is actually possible, within the influence of it and meeting my life, it's as if there's something that was initially separate and attractive, needs to find a home within to actually be what it is in terms of its trueness, its I can't quite find the right word. It's completeness. It's true to its originations, without it being a false construct. So this presented a kind of a dilemma in a way to reapproach the whole project from a different place. And it's not to completely shatter everything that has been weaving its way throughout my life and our lives together, and the recordings and everything that's beginning to build in the domain. In fact, it's because of that partly that something is beginning to, well, I think it was always beginning to have a release into humanity, but in terms of a more close-in domain in the Universalis project, the access and the traffic, it's almost as if what it holds in itself is causing and asking for something else from my life. And that has taken me on a little bit of a journey to, in a way, find out what I can guarantee, what I know, what's part of my journey, what's part of my generational journey in terms of the epoch unfolding, where I am now, and then to raise the questions of the what next and how to integrate in a deeper, more effective, more real way.
Thank you. So the sense of this, the way I'm experiencing what you're describing, and let me test if I'm hearing this correctly, that, and I will accentuate something, and then by all means adjust or modulate or regulate or reframe that. The sense is, it's almost as though some of it was in the first place coming from outside. You were seeing and looking at these looms and yourself participating in creating that, but there is a sense in which it is outside of you, and then there is a point where that which is a concept or a frame of looking at something outside of you becomes something else because it draws closer and nearer, and now you begin to see it in you and you begin to see yourself in it, and even within that there is a gentle dance of not superimposing or not imposing prematurely you on it or it on you, but allowing rather that discovery and conversation to unfold on the inside, such that it carries true evolutionary transformative potential rather than intellectual one. That was one of the big points we made in the last two recordings, was how this endeavor is not an intellectual one. So what would you restate or say differently about the way I have received and internalized what you offered?
Yes, I think the dance aspect is very accurate because it's very undefined, and it needs to be. It needs to be in this, what we've called like a liminal space, where threads from my life can recognize different ways of thinking or different, and it's not just limited to thinking, because it's a holistic thing. It's finding different things within the whole of my being, and that is past, future, and present, as well as current space. and reacting to different situations and responding. And I think there are some other, there are I think quite a few facets, but the fact that I can't name them all now is part of it, because it's a bit of a shape-shifting time. But I think there are two very important things. One is the deeper grounding that is has an anchoring in, again, a kind of past, present, and future almost. It's an anchoring in something that is transient but real. And and that is what can allow the free ranging and a little bit more confidence in that, to kind of let go of some of the what were previous securities, but they were probably more culturally anchored in things that won't allow the movement. So yeah, it's that very fine edge of trusting and believing, and at the same time knowing. It's a dance of many different things coming together. And
Yeah.
It's interesting how it's been coming out more. I don't profess to be a poet. I'm not really good at writing poems. However, that medium allows words to be a little bit freer. And the same with drawing and art. There's some things that can be conveyed a little bit more than in specific writing. But conversations and finding the right word, and sometimes there isn't a right word because we're talking about new things, is part of it as well.
Well, let me make a couple of observations and actually put an appreciative notation of significance on what you're describing, and then ask you a question or two. Actually, I'll ask a question now so you can have it in the back of the mind while I'm making the commentary. The appreciative significance I want to paint is the kind and the quality and the nature of the transformative or the transformational process you're describing. And so therefore, the question I'm about to ask you is, what do you find helpful and or assisting you in this process of inner transformation and reconfiguration? So that's the question. You can work on it in the background while I'm just painting what you said there is in the significance that it deserves. The first thing is, most people beyond their 50s or 60s, great majority of people don't actually learn new things about themselves. They more go about their life within an existing set of patterns, and mostly when something painful happens, they look to make adjustments. When they have a crisis or difficulty, health, relational, financial, anything else, they look to make some adjustments. So point number one, to actually be engaged in deep transformational journey into your 50s and 60s and beyond is point number one of significance. Number two, in terms of this appreciative significance, is we are not describing, and you are not describing, the traditional scenario of you following either a teacher or a body of work that's framed and is more or less complete, and you need to go through the steps and the stages. And I am in this dialogue. True, I'm configuring this as I am discovering it myself. It's more, even though on most of the conversations I'm doing a lot of the talking, I'm actually not asserting myself in the traditional teacher, role. It's more storyteller, narrator, decoder of what it is that we're discovering together. And what that means is that there is a way of being together in this space whereby the historic teacher-student pattern is actually not the governing pattern at all. I mean, we would sometime on camera, on recording or off recording, will have free reflection, feedback, coaching to each other if we so choose to. And the bigger point in this is actually each person. And what you were describing is you're taking full responsibility to, well, how do I integrate this into my life? How do I make this real? And well, where do I find that I have difficulties in bringing certain elements to life? Or where do I find the path of easement, and how do I do so? And how do I make sure that if we are discovering and describing that one of the stop situations of the developmental initiatory journey of the last few centuries has been the predominant rise of intellectualism, and the capacity of the intellect was in one way an important element, as we narrated the story, to the unlock of the human potential to reason, to evaluate, to assess, to discover, to develop an objective, unbiased, colorless, in the sense of others' perspective rather than a personal, subjective perspective. Develop a third, fourth, fifth person perspective. All of that, those capacities were unlocked through the activation of the intellect. And in the way we told the story, some of it we traced to do with the green and the blue fractals, all the way in one way to Socrates and Plato, but even more so in the systemizing aspect of it, in the blue fractal all the way to Aristotle, and the way we then describe the rise of universities and the knowledge project in the way it emerged in the 11th, 12th century and through the Renaissance into the Enlightenment. What we said, that was a critical story in the evolutionary, initiatory, human, epochal story that we are narrating, and at the same time, it developed some pathological or shadow elements. Hence this idea or myth of separation, and how critical it was that inside it the self became a project of the last really 4 or 6 centuries. And at the same time, the self now need to be reintegrated inside a greater whole, and that in that actually there is no shortcut, because we each must become self-regulating, self-authoring, self-responsible in the way we do the integration inside out. So the way you are describing the process on the inside is the actuality of it. It's the being in the liminal not knowing. You are Karen, you're not Aviv. You can't do an Aviv. Thanks God. We've got one problem in the universe called Aviv. We need to have the problem or the opportunity called Karen and Kyriaki, and so is the case with everybody else. And so what we're describing is the Universalis arena is a playground, is a theater where we actually get to discover that new way of integration in ourselves. And the background to it is that really the last 3-4 decades has been the preparatory journey for what we are feeling and sensing is being unlocked in this decade. And so this is me giving you time to think about Okay, so inside this theater of integration and playground, what do you find that's helpful for you in your unique way to sift, to sort through, to sense, to integrate, to make it your own, and at the same time always the conundrum with integrating and making something our own? How do we make something our own so it is self-arising, at the same time do so without narrowing it to our size, but rather make the integration such that it finds its liberation with us rather than arrestation with us? Okay, how would you respond to that?
Yes, a few thoughts. I can only think of a process that might go on, and it's important to ascertain here or state here that there are thoughts, there are ways of thinking that have a connection. They have a life. They have a kind of a potency. And so this might be something that I've heard or has been introduced in a greater context, or has come from another person, or part of this body of work. And it may catch my thoughts, and that can be limiting if it's just repeated and it's just held in a context. But what I find happening is, sometimes it will disappear, but other times, if I can, in a way, just think about it, just allow my faculties to play with the thoughts, and not to not to dismiss anything that's very small. It might just be a phrase, it might be a word, or a bigger concept, and let that play through my systems. Then often what will happen is there will be another thread that will say, well, why don't look at this first thread through the eyes of this other thread? And it's like a marriage can begin to evolve, and it can be like a catalyst to a creative process or a thought. And that can be connective or not. It could, as an example, I'll share with Kyriaki something I shared with yourself, Aviv, recently. I was thinking about the nature of abiding, and lots of different thoughts were coming through, which I won't go into the whole thing, but I started to think about, or what turned up was the image of the fly fisherman. And it was because I was thinking about, I don't know much about the fly fisherman, yet coincidentally there was a whole program on television that was showing how they cast their rod back to send it forward. And I was thinking, if you're wanting a forward trajectory, you have to go back, because you're talking about something that's long wave. And then that started to evoke a whole set of images about the river and the fisherman, and it ended up with the whole concept of the apparent stillness, the fly fisherman standing in the water being completely still, but that belies the fact that she is ready to respond at a moment, because their faculties are finely tuned. And that was thinking about abiding, that abiding can appear to be a very still, nothing going on process, but it's because your faculties have been programmed, aligned, in syncopation, as it were, to whatever it is you are focused on. So there's a kind of a past, a kind of a reason, a process, and what you're aiming for, which other people would not see. So I'm talking about that because that was an example of how to think about something and something else arising and ending up with a third thing, which in that case was a poem about abiding and the fly fisherman. So that's one of the threads. The other thread that I think came up to do the question is where I would be in myself. And it's trying to avoid the kind of front brain aspect and to be mindful that there are different energies and different fuels. And this is a very recent, and this is kind of part of the conversation we're talking about, because things are different now to how they were 6 months ago when we started this journey. And there are different potencies that can be tapped and can be accessed that can help in this process. I'm very new to this, so I couldn't say what they are or how to necessarily, but I'm beginning to get a deeper sense. And where this is very important, I think all of this, is that there's more of there's a kind of marriage of self-realization and self-responsibility and a kind of a part of the individuation journey, but of a singularity that is much more resilient and maybe more willing to face things and the future. Hopefully not too many challenges in this world that we're in. I feel in a very privileged situation to be even talking about these sort of things in this, safe ecology. And I'm mindful of that too.
Well, let me try and say back to you, decode what you describe into a brief of 1 or 2 or 3 key practices that then can be universalized in the sense that each person can translate those to in a way that's relevant for them. So you have, first of all, is what you don't do. You don't try to take all the content, all the words that I say, all the words we say, and shove them into your head. You just don't work like this. That would be the intellectual, linear way of learning by rote. That's not what this process is about. Number 1. Number 2, you are mapping at a high level the many threads of the process. You didn't necessarily identify it very much at the moment, but I know because I've seen in your writings that you will come out of a conversation and you will map the high level threads in it such that you have access if you need to. Third, which is what you emphasized, you're really leading from the unconscious. Because we talked a long time ago about on portals, on the idea of leading from the unconscious, rather than thinking that you need to follow it from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. There is an inherent trust and belief. I'm not sure belief is the right word, but yes, belief and trust, and way of relaxing into allowing the inner technology, the inner human technology that we are each sitting in, which is the human system we are each sitting in, allowing your human system to be kindled or activated or switched on in whatever it is that it wants to find as an entry point. And part of the way to appreciate this is that when we describe a connected, integrated domain, it really matters not where you enter it. You could enter it through 360 degrees of entry, wherever you find the path of, sometimes you'll call it the path of least resistance, but the path of connected activation is the path where somewhere in your system there is resonance, there is, the key is matching the lock, and it opens up for you. This is why we need more people inside the domain, because the domain that we are exploring, in this case the project, the research of Homo Universalis, each person is actually going to unlock and reveal different facets. It has its own hologramic, I don't know that it's 3-dimensional, it's 7-dimensional or 21 different dimensions, or whatever number of dimensions. And they will be activated in each human configuration in a unique way, and will light. It's like a cathedral that has many sides and facets, and each person will project a light on a different side, and you will see parts you've never seen before. That only works when the person, in this case yourself, you allow yourself to find what it is that is truly kindled in you, both ways, by way of choosing to integrate and allow that to come into fruition and blooming in you, and also recognizing what becomes activated that perhaps need to be disarmed, relaxed, and gently released. In the variety of, sometimes people talk about this in the idea of shadow work, and we've talked about shadow work, but we're actually expanding that lens beyond the traditional sense of shadow work. So all that is part of the 2 or 3, 4 steps that I've heard from what you are asserting, the central, most important principle of which is a certain self-responsibility, which, if I needed to narrate, sounds to me, and then I'm curious if you would reframe it and say differently in any way, it's as though you are saying to your system, we are in a safe place. Let us play together and discover what's the best way for us to proceed. Because we are, all of us humans are now invited into an evolving ecology of a new epoch in which we get to reconfigure ourselves, and the self-electing, self-configuring, self-authoring responsibility is actually to step up to that dialogue, that conversation, because no one else can do it for ourselves. We are all children or toddlers, really, seeking to grow and mature into that kind of relationship with the universe in a new epochal phase, in which, even though as we are toddlers in it, we're actually invited to become adults in that sense of self-responsibility. And that is a very important and has a sense, an energetic sense of something from the inside rising up of, yes, I choose to do so. Nobody else can do it for me. I get to participate in the renaturalization of the human species into its new phase of evolution. That's the brief I'm receiving from what you offered. What would you reframe or restate or?
Well, I think what an amazing opportunity, the way you phrased that. I think, well, you know, we are humans born at this time where so much is possible. Um, that sounds so limiting in terms of the vast array. And I started this conversation by saying that we were born into a time of liberation, and it was for us to take it into the next step, to expand and explore, and to have these opportunities to follow our own individual journeys. So, the silver threads of my life, I can see go back to those sort of formative teenage years, and they've not really changed much along the way. different cul-de-sacs and such like, and other times of incredible release and freedom. So I think being born at this time and being aware of this is, how can I do anything other? We talk about service, we talk about, well, what can I do? And that's always a question. It's always it's part of our humanity. And I think, to try as best to be at the leading edge of the generation, the evolutionary impulse of this time is it's a worthy thing to do with a life, with my life. It's what I've dedicated to do. And I feel so privileged to have had and this is where I've got to say the whole Epoch training, the understandings of the work that we've been doing with the greater delegation and within this smaller grouping.
When you talk about the greater delegation, it's a code word we've used to the people that are journeying together in the discovery of the Epoch culmination network, and we call ourselves mountaineers, a delegation of mountaineers climbing. We don't know whether it's Mount Everest or any other mountain, but it's the mountain of the Epoch transition, Epoch culmination. So I don't know that we've used this word before here, so that's a code word for the network of people that are involved in the exploration.
Yes, thank you. I think, yes, apart from the understandings and the connection, you talked about the connective domains of this work. I think alongside it, totally embedded and weaving within it has been this thread of the ways and means of being able to access different technologies and different ways to not only find these threads and these ways of progressing in our own lives, but to appreciate and recognize them in others. And as you say, with the facets, to value the difference. And the two go together. You can't appreciate your own abilities or other people's abilities without the two, because it's part of the human story and where we are now. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, so thank you. We're going to bring now Kyriaki into the conversation in a moment. To catch the last thread there, where both you and I use the word technology in a different context, and mostly it is used, what we are describing is the human natural technology. We've lived through a technological age. The generation of our children, they came into a highly sophisticated technological world. We are in some way the bridge generation, and part of the discovery that we are bringing to the Universalis project is the re-authentication, the reintegration, the revalidation, the recapitulation in the sense of bringing the full spectrum of inner human technology, the facilitative technology, the various listening technology, the the variety, which is one of the spaces we will go to in the future, of the new sense organs and sense faculties that are activated and are, in some case, were latent and are being activated, and in some case, this is where part of the research may have been in the DNA potential of the human model, but really inside this new ecology are birthed in a whole new way where there was perhaps not available access to these before. So these are potentially wild assertions. So we radical assertions. We will take the time and the care to re-journey into these spaces in the future. The point being made now, and the bridge to where you described in your brief, was the entry point is choosing to trust once again the human system. Yes, we are so enhanced because we have the telescope and the microscope and all the computing powers available for us, and yet we are saying, wonderful, can we reintegrate, re-engage, revalidate, re-authenticate the human interior technology? Because the Universalis release, the Universalis activation needs those wirings, needs those latent formations. Okay. Where would you like to come into this conversation, Kyriaki, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, it's very rich, and it brings to mind, it sounds like Karen, from the frequency of your insights, that you're getting closer. This is my sense, to a devotional life that is in a way between you and your purpose, and that it's bringing the whole promise of the Homo Universalis a bit closer in. This is my sense. And how to, that this is an actual thing and it's not just theoretical, and how to integrate it with your life, your generation, the role of the generation. Yeah, this is a very nice frequency to swim in what you are saying. So in relation to also the previous recordings we had, what stayed with me is, for instance, regarding the 7 agents of the spiritual death. It's how do we find and source in ourselves and grow in ourselves the antibiotics and the vitamins that will counterbalance these influences or superimpose on these influences, so as to be a more natural human as a first step. So what to put in place, or how to heal and release the shadows in a way. And there are many others. And also individually and collectively. This is the one thread. The other thread, also, I told you in the conversation we had before recording, something that I am a lot brewing in is how to bridge the distance from perception and the cognitive, which I think it's very, very important to grow the cognitive and to grow the mental filaments. But how to bridge that with a more embodied living expression, manifestation, and become the vessel of the core essence of this knowledge. And how to join these things and be joined and contain it, but not contain it and fix it and lock it in a prison, but move with it and have a moving containment. You contain it, you don't, release it, you contain it, but you move with it also. This is another thread. And the third thing that is like a question with me is tracing all this, the pathway of knowledge or of human awakening or of the development of human consciousness through the various stages and through the rainbow spectrum that we trace together. It seems that now it's the time that the human can hold all these threads all together at the same time. I don't fully understand this. I cannot say, I cannot claim to be able to do this thing. But I feel that maybe one of the next steps, it's a human that can integrate and hold various lines together, all these lines actually. And I see what you said to Karen, that you don't need, to kind of put your mind, necessarily tyrannize your mind to hold all the threads. Maybe start from one thread. And I love the analogy with the flying fisherman, going back and, wow, that was something. And but I feel that now, and maybe it's not our generation, maybe it's the next generation, they can hold many different threads together and integrate all these different potencies, the red, the orange, the blue, the green, and how to hold them together and fuse them together.
Yes. Well, so you painted 3 main threads. Let me ask you about the second one, where you describe that the process that is prime with you is the bridge or the pathway or the process whereby you can give rise to what is cognitive and is the realm of perception, for it to find and reach dynamic embodied actualization. Dynamic in the sense of, as you said, not fixed, not arrested. So if you were to describe what's assisting you, what's helping you in this process, by way of looking at the laboratory that you are. I mean, each one of us, we are a laboratory for the universalis dimension of human life that's arising now. And that's why we ought to be forensically learning about all the evidence that's appearing in the laboratory that we constitute. And when you look at your laboratory, at your experience, what do you find that's working for you to help you journey from the cognitive perception to the dynamic embodiment?
One thing is to first trace the reasons behind things. So to wonder about the reasons. For instance, why there is this rainbow, why there is red, what does it mean? So in tracing the reasons, maybe, and also appreciating the values of something, it's a bridging. And then trying to place that in a context of everyday life, of what does it say to do? So, okay, this knowledge is, wow, fantastic. It can be better than ecstasy. But beyond that, beyond this release of the reward system and the dopamine, what does it say then to do? Or what does it say then to be? Not even to do, but just to be and radiate. And maybe it also relates with what Karen and you were saying before about responsibility. That when you are aware of something or you perceive something, in a way you adopt it or you become responsible for its being through you. And how to share it so that it can move, so that you don't arrest it. So it's also how to integrate it in your processes, in your even in your behavioral sciences, and in your various expressions, and how this can cause a refinement and a process of purification, healing, elevation, transference, and a state of being with things, a state of joining things.
Yes.
I think their higher potential in a way.
Yes. Let me try and decode the moves you are describing, because they are not obvious at all. Because the first place you describe that you go to, so again, the question was, what is it you do that's assisting and facilitative to journey from the perception or the assimilation of knowledge to the release of that knowledge and the blooming of that knowledge by way of dynamic embodiment. And what you're describing is not going to be obvious and not necessarily intuitive for everybody. So I'm going to describe to you how I decode what you said there, and you then feel free to restate it. The first place you went to, you're describing that you are inquiring into the reasoning. Now, for many, when you say that, they will say, well, how could that be? Reasoning is going back into the head. But that's not the way you describe reasoning. The way I hear, what I hear in your inquiry of whatever it is, perception, knowledge that you're grappling with, the quest to appreciate reasoning, originating reasoning, is really the quest to come into contact with why something is arising in the first place, and the motivating power and propelling impulse of whatever it is that any aspect of the body of work we are unfolding. this is just, I'm going to put a parenthesis here because it provides us a case in point about something to do with this moment in time and the generational differences and the Universalis project. We are people that were born in the second half of the 20th century and came into the digital age as adults, as in comparison to our children who were born into a digital age or just before the digital age. So our parents' generation, if I look here at 3 generations, our parents were people that, in metaphoric terms, the light was outside. They lived, it was an ideological age, conceptual age, the first half of the 20th century. The modernity project was at its prime. And the way it expressed itself in the world was these global systems that were established. The United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, these global agreements, these global systems that enable global commerce, the various world standards. So many things were established, especially after the Second World War. But what we are describing, that in the evolutionary story, this was the systemizing phase, and the power was very much outside of the human, in the system outside the human. We were the generation that the light was no longer just outside the light. We were the generation that came into needing to turn on the light inside, waking up to the interior journey. So that's why you have, in the middle of the century, the roots of it are earlier, obviously, in the 20th century, in the work of Freud and in psychoanalysis coming into the mainstream, and all the many other parallel lines of modern spiritual work, developmental work, community work, and so on. These were all endeavors heralding the interior journey, activating the interior journey, where we engaged in these early phases of integration. So which makes it curious as to why we are now journeying into a new phase of integration. Now, here is the curious thing. That was very much still influenced and somewhat overshadowed by the primacy of the intellect, by the primacy of an ideological, conceptual age. And we were discovering and searching for the interior experience of that. Part of the counter reaction to that we see with younger generation, with the 20 plus today, is that they refuse to take anything from the outside and want to make the primacy not the concept and not the structure outside, but how I am experiencing it on the inside. My feeling is this, my feeling is that. I'm now happy, I'm now angry, I'm now upset. And they often lead with that, which is part of the challenge that they face. And part of the conundrum of that generation is the move they are instinctually driven into, feeling shapes thinking and conceptualizing, which is in one way, it's smart when the infrastructure is already seated in the system. But in another way, is potentially a cul-de-sac, because it's not, if the feeling and the inner process is not tethered to something that has a natural wiring into the way things work in the universe, they time and again recycle themselves in a place that's arrested rather than in a place that's liberated. So that's a very long, winding way for me to say you're demonstrating in the brief you follow that when something becomes important for you, or when you are inspired with a body of work or knowledge or anything we will look at, you are seeking to come into contact with the motivating, propelling reasons why it arose in the first place. And that is not a brain or a mental or a conceptual thing. It actually is leading the natural human system in you to the place where you can make contact with the originating impulse. That's how I'm experiencing the inquiry about reasoning. So I'm going to say one more thing here and then ask you if I'm hearing this correctly, or if you'd restate it in any way, because where that leads us, both with what we're exploring through your self-configured brief and with a self-configured brief from Karen, is we're discovering that the project of the universe, the Universalis human project, is to do with coming into some kind of partnering with yourself and with the universe you are emerging in. That is, if somebody said, what is the Universalis project? It's a new way of being. It's a new way of partnering on the inside with the universe at large, inside of which we're looking to liberate a whole new set of latent technologies within the human system and codify those and translate them and build the topographical landscape such that we can liberate even more so all that becomes available for us, because part of the intuition is that we are only operating at the moment in the 1 or 2 or 3% of its potential, and that the next 1,000 years is about unlocking that greater potential. Hence, the cruciality of that is that it's a dialogue rather than being arrested outside of yourself in a conceptual world, or arrested inside yourself in the feeling that's not tethered to something that connects you to the bigger prospect of your liberation in the universe. No, you want to actually be in the crucible of those interpenetrating realms. They are not separated. They are porous. They are not even cross-pollinating. It's multi-pollinating each other, because each is inside the other and they each discover and learn about each other. We are describing a way in which human life and its arising to its next potentiating evolution is a way for the universe to learn about itself. In other words, can I surrender in myself to a way of being intimate with my discovery process on the inside, how I grapple with pain, how I grapple with love. Let's rephrase and reframe the word grapple with how I relax into pain and how I relax into love. Okay, so I'm listening to what I'm saying and I'm rescripting mid-flight. That is part of the intimacy of engaging with the inner human natural technology inside this process, where there is an emergent intelligence stream that's imbuing the space that we are exploring, whereby it is learning about us and we are learning about it all at the same time. It has a, rather than double helix, it's a quadruple helix, because there is each one of us inside ourselves. There is the mutualized space and each one of us inside the mutualized space. There is the the map of meaning and sense making and perception unlocking that's emergent in that's being developed, and there is the activation of all of that into the many facets and roles of our lives. So it's not just arising in one or two spaces, it's arising in the simplest way in 4 different zones of activation, but really the 4 zones is a simplification. It's arising in endless points of origin, and what we are describing is that in the middle of that there is an influx, there is the fountain of life. The universe is a fountain of life that's expressing itself and arising through each one of us when we surrender the laboratory that we are as part of its discovery, where we get to live a very personal life in the universe, and also a very impersonal, in the sense that we surrender the property of being alive now and the consciousness that's arising with us as an opportunity for the universe to discover itself. That's the way I would describe this. And I promise you, I didn't smoke anything and I didn't inhale anything and take anything before this conversation. I am tomorrow meeting with an executive a team here in Lisbon to lead them through a business strategy workshop that's going to be very focused. So I'm treating myself very seriously to stay in the zone. I'm simply able to, in this conversation, skate to the edge to find the language in the moment in terms of how you are describing about your discovery process, and how I'm in the moment trying to frame in language the way it turns up for me. So what would you say to that?
Yes, I say yes. Yes to all of it. I feel that although in some parts of us as humans, maybe we went the wrong way, and there needs to be a healing and a naturalization process. In spite of that, somehow the universe is still interested. Although we've done so many mistakes and still do as human race, and maybe also personally, it's still interested in this experiment of the human species. I don't know. And it's still gushing in new things, several things, a lot of love in spite of everything. And I think it seems that there is a new upgrade possibility. And when we liberate a part of us, or when we reach a new sphere of understanding, of being, of feeling, we connect to a different part of the host, and it connects through us. And that allows a different improvisation and fusion in all the range.
You are describing, and you used the word there when you said the host, which is a word you're using to describe the more than human realms. And you're saying that it is possible for human life to be enhanced and blessed with energy, with inspiration, with stamina, with recoverability, resilience, that could appear superhuman, because we are, in that sense, superhumans when we are joined by the creative and the supportive dimensions of life that are natural for human life. And you're describing that even in this time that we're seeing a lot of the cumulative pain and scar tissue generated throughout the epoch, that the universe did not lose interest in its beloved partnering humanity, and is offering humanity a new possibility, a new permission. It just needs some people joining the party to dance. It's about, will somebody show up for the dancing party? And it seems at the moment there are many people actually showing up in many different places in recent years and in recent months to self-arising dancing parties with the possibility of human life all over the planet. So, and we're trying to, in the Universalis project, simply encourage that and say yes to that and recognize its arising and decode and map some of its natures. So.
Yeah, but I also see that this is a result of a journey. I don't think it's something that we can tap in. It sometimes takes years, it takes effort, it takes a lot of work. It takes sometimes to fall on your feet, to fall on your face and learn from your mistakes. And it's a constant struggle, I think. And it's not something that someone, because he wants or she wants, you can tap into these states of consciousness where you see through the eyes of the universe, or the universe sees through your eyes. So just to say that it's, and I'm not claiming to be there, but I see that it's a journey, and there are many, many things that need to be in place or to be healed so that this becomes real and not theoretical. And I'm really wondering on let's say the maladies of a non-embodied spiritual development, in a way.
Yes.
Because I think it can lead to many maladies. Or let's say if you have a very, very embodied life without spirituality, again, it can lead to many maladies.
Well, yes. All of which is exactly the point as to why we need to be engaged in the discovery of a journey like this, and why the best way to engage with a development journey is to put it inside an even bigger frame, a bigger premise. And the bigger premise is become a laboratory for the universe learning about itself. And so what is emerging here today for us, we can perhaps frame as the Universalis human is a way of liberating a new kind of partnering with the universe. And what we are seeking in this project to unlock are the multifaceted paths and ways and natures of this liberation and of this partnering. What kind of partnering is it? Which incidentally brings up in me something interesting, because it will be, so when I ask myself, so what have I learned already in life about partnering? There is a piece I will do tomorrow, and I've done with groups of leaders and executives for the last maybe 12 or 15 years. And every time it has its updating way, the core premise of which is, it's really a very brief segment, but it's a way to look at the very conversation we've been inside of from an even simplified, for a moment, a simplified frame. My core premise in doing with them a very short piece about breakthrough partnering is, if you're a successful executive in a large international company, whatever role you'll be in, whether you are heading a business unit or an operational unit or whatever, you will be successful because you're able to partner effectively with many other people. There's no way to operate in a large complex system without being effective in partnering. So I turn to them and I say, look, you have been successful and you'll be even more successful when you can take the key partnering relationships in your professional life, and, or by the way, in your personal life as well, into a new level of partnering. So therefore, I say, let me offer you a way of looking at partnering such that you get a new power tool in your hands. And there is a point where people realize, yeah, that's true. Some people will say, no, I have 100 or 200 people that I partner with. Most people, they have like core 10, 12, 16, 20, 30 people that make them successful, that enable their success. And we're living certainly in the business world, in the corporate world, with very self and individualistic ethos and myth. So unless you actually stop people and say, do you realize you've been very successful through those 15 or 20 people that enable you to be successful? Oh yeah. What an epiphany, what a realization. It might be a good idea to exercise more care and more attention to how you cultivate those partnering relationships, because you could be even more successful. And so I offer them a three-legged or a threefold framework, and I say the first condition, the first element of breakthrough partnering is trust. If we don't have trust, we won't begin the conversation, let alone collaborate or partner. And then there is a lot deeper work we're doing to trust. I won't go into it now. But number one is trust. But trust by itself is insufficient, because we can trust each other, but unless we have some shared imperative that will drive us to actually collaborate and partner now, we may like each other and trust each other, but it doesn't actually mean there will be something we will work on together. So there has to be shared trust, and there need to be some shared imperative, shared need, sometimes shared threat could become a need that will actually pull us together. And then I offer them that there is, so that's great, but what happens if 2 weeks or 2 months later the urgent need was addressed, was alleviated? The collaboration, the partnering will disappear. So you need to bring a third condition, third element. And that third element is shared purpose. So I call this the TIP of breakthrough partnering and collaboration. Shared trust, shared imperative, and shared purpose. Any two of these will be good but insufficient. If we only trust each other, but we don't have a shared imperative and shared purpose, there won't be the drive. If we have a shared imperative, but we don't have something that will hold us in a sustained way, the partnership will not be durable. If we have a shared trust and a shared purpose, but there isn't an urgent need, it will be an on-off partnering. So you need to bring these three conditions. So therefore, if you are leading a complex system and you need to partner with people inside your organization and outside your organizations, what in the business world they call different stakeholders group, you need to cultivate with those different audiences in a flexible and resourceful way, shared trust, shared imperative, and shared purpose, including sometime with systems and organizations that are also in a competitive play with you. How do you do that? So that's part of what we are developing. So now why it's interesting to look at it in this way, because so this is completely like 3 octaves down from the universal space we've just been in, but I can take this and say, okay, have I learned to trust life and the universe? Yeah, what if I try to run this framework through the idea of me or each one of us being a life in the universe? Have I truly relaxed in a new way to trust life, to trust the universe? And do I feel, or to what degree do I feel that I can be trusted by the universe as a life-giving, life-supporting agent? Or to what degree am I still, rather than a safe place to open and begin new things, to what degree am I a dead ender? Because the moment I become intellectual about something, becomes a dead end. The moment I become hard in myself, I end something rather than I give it life. So to what degree am I truly trusted agent of life for the universe? And can I be trusted in that I embody, not intellectually, but for real, the imperative of the universe? So what's the imperative of the universe? Well, that deserves a whole 2 hours conversation. But one simple way to begin is, one of the imperatives of the universe is there has to be the process of renewal and regeneration in the universe. Because if you take away, if you remove regenerability, rejuvenation, renewal as a property, as an emergent property in the universe, the universe as a living being, as a theater of life, will quickly come to an end. Well, so can I be trusted to be a space, to be an ecology maker where regeneration becomes possible? Or will I be one of those agents of death that you reminded us of, Kyriaki, where those influences of those 7 vectors that we described on an earlier conversation, do they become predominant in me? So how do I calibrate that? Because I said when we talked about materialism that I wasn't playing pure, I was using the material world as well. But in what way? And how am I configured in that? That's an example of I'm not looking to use this as a way of being penalizing or judgmentally punishing on myself. I am in the laboratory of discovery, in the intimacy of self-examination. Right. And so can I be trusted that I'm a place of regenerability in myself? Can I be, first of all, regenerative in myself? Can I pick myself up when I feel down or when I fall on my face? Can I be, once again, a self-starter rather than expect that somebody else will rescue me? Not that I can't ask for help, I can ask for help, but can I bring to the help I ask, even there, some kind of a self-responsibility? And then, can I be trusted with a sense of shared purpose with the universe and with life? Okay, so now we are opening a whole other arena of conversation, because you could say, so what is the purpose of life and the purpose of the universe? Bigger contemplation for another day, and yet at the same time, a way to see this is the broader idea of evolution. Not idea of evolution, the broader actuality of evolution. That the fact that the universe is a place where there is an evolutionary process, inside of which and to which there is a teleology, but not teleology that is deterministic. It's like we described on an earlier conversation how the toddler, from crawling to standing to walking, that journey represented a teleology in the toddler's life, conducted by the soul orchestrating loom of intelligence to release and liberate the toddler to become a self-sufficient, independent adult. Inside of which that person is completely free to choose whether they're going to be a poet or a dancer or anything else, really. Business leader, entrepreneur, a gardener, a nurse, or anything else. So I'm just gives me an opportunity to sneak here on the radar, a point about teleology, that when we use the idea of teleology and when we frame purpose, we are not describing a paradigm that is deterministic. We're describing that there is an emergent property that's inclusive of the thou mayst. You can do and become all that's available in the universe. You are self-electing, self-authoring, self-configuring, universal life. Inside of which, I ask myself, can I be trusted to be a place that's regenerative first and evolutionary oriented second, in which case I am a place where the universe can begin to trust me for that shared imperative and shared purpose. So then I can ask, okay, am I ready to discover the Zorba needed to rediscover his dance? Am I ready to, without having to be Zorba the Greek, you can be Zorba the anything. I'm in Lisbon today, so today I can be Zorba the Portuguese. And next week I get back to Seattle, so I can be the Zorba the something else. Am I ready to dance the dance of the universe in the way it wants to arise and express itself through me, through us in this moment in time? That is the invitation of the Universalis human, including the pain and the joy, the love and the sorrow, and the full spectrum in between, in terms of the initiatory process. So, in other words, what we're describing is that Homo Universalis is a way in which we are imagining and contemplating human life to be the place where the theater through which the universe liberates itself to its greater potential. That's the premise of that, and the invitation is, can we relax into it? Can we be intimate with this process? Can we soften rather than harden to it? It's life and the world make us hard in so many ways. We think we ought to be something. We think we ought to to like, can I be tomorrow in a different context with people who have a different need and different set of expectations? They don't need me to do what I'm doing here. Can I meet their need and still be me, sourced in these same themes and ideas? In other words, when I'm going to work with them tomorrow on releasing and cultivating in their life breakthrough partnering, I'm not going to take them into the universal premise of it. The premise of me working with them at that level is helping them get improved results in their life, in their career, in what they do. I can do that and in myself be sourced in what I'm describing. I can be in both places at the same time. And you know, something profoundly special and miraculous happens. Because I am sourced in that other point of awareness, we are addressing the content at the level that's appropriate for that situation, but it becomes totally conductive and liberating for them, because I never forget for a second that they're working in a company that affords them to spend 3 days with me in this way, and we are serving the company's agenda. But I am flying, this is something I'm flying under the radar. I see each person as a whole human. And I have maybe one opportunity in a lifetime to be with them together in the room, and there is something in me that's completely devoted to be supportive and in service to the bigger fruition and liberation of their life as a whole person. And oh, by the way, my research reveals that when they do so, they will become better leaders, more effective with people, with their clients, with the larger ecosystem that they're operating in. This has been a core premise for me over the last 25 years, having done this work in large corporations. Hardly ever anybody asks me about what inspires the work, but that's what inspires the work. They just see the results. So it means that something that I am sourced in at a universal or spiritual inquiry and continue to evolve with has an embodied translation in the business world inside a frame of language and an experiential transferable know-how that people are able to experience, apply, and get immediate results. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying what they're paying for these experiences, time and again. So, how about that as Universalis episode 7 that we will choose to call Partnering with the Universe. This emerged live through endeavoring to decode each of your experiences with our journeys in the first 6 episodes.
Brilliant analogy of the 3 imperatives for a partnership. So true. So I can see that. Also thinking of various friends, couples that divorced, and maybe one of the 3 was not there. But definitely in the businesses and in anything really. And to see it also as an allegory for partnering with the universe and all the steps you.
I don't know even if it's allegory. It's allegory until it becomes a living actuality that's embodied in the day-to-day experience. Yeah. If we treat the universe as a living being, it becomes actual.
Moving also to hear about your devotion and seeing even in a business circumstance people as humans and what can be shared. I love that.
Karen, any closing words from you?
The whole concept of dancing with the universe, and I feel that you've taken us into the crucible of that, and it's wonderful. I just really felt the potential and the possibility, and wow, huge depth and range to explore there. And just one small thing that did pop in was the very close to partnership is parenting. And there has been a thread about midwifing the future, and just to mention that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was
brilliant. Yeah, wonderful. So, and parenting is a special kind of partnering both ways. Parents are raising their children, and the children are raising their parents. So there is a partnering process going on there. And so how about if we land it here with an invitation that this 7 conversation brought us to, that the bigger project, the bigger Universalis project, is about discovering how we can partner with life and with the universe into this new next phase of evolution, to be continued. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Along with our website at portalsofperception.org, Portals is also available on YouTube and on all podcast platforms, as well as social media. You can become an active member and join the conversation in community events. And you can help us get the word out by liking this content and by sharing it with your friends.